All right, we're back with another video. I think this will be a really short one. The title of this video is Fewer Scripts. But really the question is, how many scripts? And I'm just going to show you the landscape here in my scripts directory. Let me see, here we are, scripts. So there's a bunch of scripts here in my optics landscape, a good number. And you can see they all have to be named with enough resolution and detail that I know what's going on, and so forth. But if each of these scripts were handling one phase of my workflow, let's say I had a 5-stage workflow, and stuff had to happen in order. Then I had some other scripts that were chewing on the final output. It's very likely that the way those scripts would be named would not wind up having them being in perfect alphabetical order so that I could see, okay, this one and then that one and then that one and then that one. I mean, I could name them with numbers, but that just clutters things up. So there's something I did with my optics landscape that you've already seen, but I haven't really talked to it here. So I'm going to pull in my main optics script here. And we're just going to look at the usage statement again. And so here's what I want you to notice. I have one script called optics.py. It handles all the stuff related to anything going on with optics, which was my test harness and results viewer. So I knew if I was going to do anything, I was going to run the optics script. What specifically I did would be one of these follow-up commands. So I have one script that does a lot of things. Now this script file is not a gigantic file. It's not tiny, but each command delegates to some class that's going to do this stuff for that command. So the amount of code in this script for each command is just a small number of lines, and it's just a big else if statement here running things. So it made it really easy to add commands because I knew I would just add another else if block here. I'd probably be able to reuse a lot of the code to prep things, and I'd write the new class for handling that particular command. Now, why is this a stress reducer? Well, having fewer script files means you have fewer files, which means you have less scrolling around, and you have less thinking about, oh, which script is the appropriate one to run. By having a script called optics that has commands as arguments, it's like you're saying the context first, and then you're really saying the detail. But the context is the one script, right? Let's look at the usage statement again. What would the landscape have looked like if I chose to write these as separate scripts rather than arguments to my one central script? Well, they would wind up over here somewhere, having names that were not necessarily closely related to each other. I would have to remember every time I wanted to run one, okay, which one was that? Then I would probably do a little bit of scrolling. And since I ran these all the time, eventually I'd remember what they were, but probably only after a lot of scrolling. And then if I didn't run them for a week and I went back to it, I'd be back to, oh, what do I do? So having this kind of queued up here, it's like, okay, I'm going to do anything with optics, I'm going to run the optics script. I can't forget that. It's too straightforward. Then once I know I have to run the optics script, but I can't remember what the commands are, all I do is say python optics.py return, and it'll print the message about what the usage should be. These are the commands you can run, and then I'd know. And I'd be off and running. It was much less stressful than having a lot of scripts. I've worked on a lot of projects, and I've seen a lot of script bloat. And I'm throwing no shade on the developers that did that. Some of them were me. But as the project evolves and you decide, okay, is this a top-level script or is it a script underneath this subdirectory? And then where were those scripts? And there's just a lot to keep track of. And somebody new coming on the project, they're like, okay, I want to get a sense of what's going on. Oh, 30 scripts? Forget it. And so if you have a few scripts and each one has a bunch of commands associated with it as arguments, it's just much easier to grasp what the landscape is, because you don't have to worry about naming all the different scripts in a way that's semantically close to each other. Now, I just realized I've been harping on this notion of having fewer files, and it's not really true that I have fewer files, because each one of these subcommands of the optics script has its own file to hold the class that's being delegated to. But those files are somewhere else. They're tucked away here in other directories. So like the thing that shows the scores is right here in its class. It's not an invocable script with a main. So it doesn't clutter up the scripts directory as something that you always have to look through to figure out, okay, which thing do I want to run? So it's better organized, keeps the script count down, which helps with bloat, helps with people coming on board, etc., etc., etc. Now, I'm not saying that you should always have just one script file and everything you do is a subcommand of that. The things you want to group in the one script file should all be very closely related to each other. In my case, it was the optics system, the test harness, and the thing looking at the results from those tests. There were other scripts that I needed to write that had nothing to do with that, and so they would be put in the scripts directory as well. But if you have an opportunity to group things together, it can just make your landscape a lot cleaner. All right. I think that's it for this one. We'll see you next time.